Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Cowboys of the Osage podcast. Coming to you from right over here at the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum, located in historic downtown Pawhuska, Oklahoma. It's old Cody over here, and as always, I got my old co-host with me here, rodeo historian, Mr. Jimbo Snively. Hey, Jimbo, what's going on? And tell us who you got today.
Hey, Cody boy, it's another great day in the Osage, man. And we've got Mr. Rocky Garnett with us today. He's a great cowboy, been a horse trainer, a stock contractor, but he's best known for his steer roping. He was a great steer roper. He won the open rodeo at Cheyenne twice, won the seniors twice. He was a 9 times national finalist in the steer roping. And if all that's not big enough, he's also Cody Garnett's daddy. So, Rocky, welcome to the Ben Johnson Cowboy Museum and the Cowboys of the Osage podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome on, Dad. Glad to have you. Finally got him up here. Finally got him wrangled up here. It was a tough one, Jimbo.
Oh, I know it, but we've been wanting him for a long time.
Oh, yeah. We've been wanting him pretty bad. I got to clear up a little controversy right off the bat. So, my family, they all go by Garnett, Jimbo. But
Right.
growing up, all my teachers called me Garnett. And
Right.
all the rodeos I entered, they announced me as Garnett.
I know
I
it.
just thought my dad spoke a little faster than me. So, I wasn't sure. So, I go by the Garnett now. Somehow that stuck. And my dad is still a proud Garnett, but we're still the same family.
Well, I thought they always introduced Rocky as Garnett, too.
They do it a lot of places,
Yeah.
a lot of places.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was my name growing up.
Yeah,
Jimbo.
yeah. Well,
So I had to clear that up with everybody. So
right.
it's Garnett like darn it.
Okay.
That's what they've always said.
Okay.
I think Tut says Garnett like the stone, but it's not even spelled the same. So I'm not sure.
Right.
So I can't go with that one.
Yeah.
But
Well.
Garnett like darn it, I get that all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it won't be the first name we butchered here at the museum, but
Oh no. We didn't.
won't be the
butcher-
last either.
I just had to clear up all
Right.
that. We had a little bit of controversy in the family over it.
Right. Right.
It's more of a dialect thing than anything.
Right,
That's where I
right.
go it.
Yeah.
So. Sorry about all that, Dad. We had to clear that up. Got a little bit off subject right there. Well, Dad, let's start from the top right here. Where did you grow up, and when did you start the life of a cowboy?
I grew up in Clovis, New Mexico, downtown stockyards. My dad day worked everywhere around, and he was a yard boss at the sale barn for a while, and he rode all the horses through the sale. And as I grew up and got to be close to a teenager, I went to saddling horses for him, and he'd ride as many as 700 head of horses in 2 days.
So, explain that to everybody that's not in the horse trading business or the livestock sale business. So, exactly what did old Pa Pete do?
Well, during the horse sales, he would ride 95% of the horses through the sale that was broke to ride. They give him a tip or a wage to ride the horses, and he rode horses there for 25 years. He was on To Tell the Truth and Truth and Consequences as being the man that rode the most horses of anybody living.
Wow. I've heard a lot of stories from Cody about your dad, and then I even had his picture in a scrapbook and didn't know it out there at Clayton, I think, at a jackpot, and it had a picture of him, and I knew the name, but I didn't associate him with you guys till Cody saw that picture and said, that's my grandpa.
Yeah, when I was a young boy, he roped steers, and that's what pushed me to do it. I wanted to be like my dad.
Right. Well, I always thought your roping style was a little more old style than some of the guys.
Well, it should have been another one of my mentors was a man named Cotton Lee.
Yeah, well-known steer roper
Yes,
from New Mexico.
And him and my dad kind of critiqued the way I rode a horse and the way I roped.
Right. Well, it showed, that I always thought you had some mentoring from somebody like that, no doubt.
A couple more things on Pa Pete, real quick, while we're on the subject of him. So I had old Red Steagle right here in the museum the other day. Brought a whole busload of people. It was a fun day for us. And I was trying to tell him exactly, because he has a big chuck wagon gathering down in Fort Worth. And I was trying to tell him exactly what Pa Pete's job was in association with chuck wagons. And because chuck wagons have always been a deep part of the family, but for some reason I never thought to ask when I was a kid. So I got to find that out too, because I don't know Jimbo. So I can retell the story to other people.
Sure.
Well, when my dad and my mother, if they first got married, my dad was the wagon boss at the Matador, at the upper Matadors at Cheyenne, Texas. And they lived in a line camp right there on the Matador Ranch. And he, the first 3 years they was married, they lived right there on the Matador Ranch. My dad was a chuck wagon boss. And that's where my brother was born. And later on, whenever they dispersed to the Matador, the upper Matador Ranch up there, my dad acquired the old chuck box and the box of the wagon, of the wagon that was at the upper Matadors, and they pulled it out in the year 1900. It didn't have the original running gears and everything under it, and I found a set of running gears over here at Hennessy, Oklahoma, and bought them and brought them to me, and we mounted the chuck box and everything on it.
How big a ranch was that back then?
The Matador Ranch was the largest ranch in the United States at that time. When they dispersed to the upper Matadors up there, the XITs bought most of it. The LXs bought part of it, and the Browns bought part of it, and I'm not sure of the rest of it.
Yeah, I've heard of it all my life.
Those two ranches are still existing.
Yeah, right.
And my dad used to take me back up there. They had a Matador Cowboy reunion, and he always roped calves up there, and he won it one year. And I've got the spurs hanging up in my house that he won.
You know, Ike Rude won the calf roping at that Matador Cowboy reunion, I think up in his 70s, Jimbo.
Really?
I saw the saddle over there in his grandson's house the other day.
Yeah.
From that roping.
Wow.
So it was pretty strange, because I think that they would have probably crossed paths right there. Ike Rude
I'm sure.
and
I bet
my
they did.
grandfather.
I bet they did.
Because they said Ike worked for the wagon part of the Matador Ranch, so at some of the reunions they had to get to know each other.
Right.
You know?
He worked for a lot of ranches. You know, Ike did too. He loved to work on those ranches.
Ike Rude, when he would come to Clovis to the big steer open they had there, he usually stayed at the house.
Yep.
Well, I didn't know. I knew there
Yeah.
had to be
Well,
some
there you
sort of
go.
connection, but I wasn't 100% sure ever. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that chuck wagon, after he bought that thing, I guess I remember there in Clovis when y'all lived across the street from the cell barn there. They had it in there in a big row of barns, but it was totally enclosed. What was going on in that part at the time?
He built a place called the Matador House, and it was a kind of a convention center. They'd have parties in it and conventions and that sort of thing.
Dances and whatnots.
Yeah, big eats. And he done all the cooking off of that wagon.
Oh, okay.
And we'd pull it out to the fairgrounds for the Cattlemen's Association. We'd feed all them. So one time we took it to Hereford, and we buried 6,000 pounds of meat and cooked it all on the ground and served it off that chuck wagon.
Oh, wow. He ended up taking that thing quite a few places in life after he left Clovis. Come you kind of give us just a little bit of rundown where he took it and what he was doing with it?
Well, whenever he left Clovis, he come to Kansas with me for a short while, had that wagon with him, and then he went to Virginia, and he was assistant manager of a ranch for Marriott Corporation. And they had a work inside of that ranch, and then they had like a dude ranch part side of it. And he had that chuck wagon over, and he would cook for employees of Marriott Corporation.
I remember we helped that Marriott Corporation out with quite a few horses right around that time. We were going about 6 horse sales a week as a family when we went going to a roping, and they put in a lot of orders for some good horses and wagons to head back to Marriott Ranches, Jimbo.
I bet.
We were happy to send them.
Yeah, you bet.
We were happy to send them, that's for sure. So growing up around Clovis there were a lot, listen to the ropers and stuff and
Well, I know.
bronc riders and stuff from the area back when he was junior rodeoing. I mean,
I can
I don't
imagine.
know them all, but it's a pretty impressive list.
And then before that, you know, the old steer ropers and cab ropers that came from New Mexico is just a who's who of, I mean, starting with Jake McClure, one of the great cab ropers of all time, who my grandpa actually roped with, and said he could really, really rope, Jake McClure. He died young, got bucked off or fell off or something while they were working cattle and hit his head, and they just dragged him over there under a shade tree instead of taking him to the doctor, and he died. But, you know, Bob Crosby, everybody knows, you know, Carl Arnold, Cotton Lee, you know, and then later on Troy Fort, and then, like you say, the guys that your dad rodeoed with. It's really a hotbed of rodeo history out there.
You know, Bob Crosby, that guy was something else. You ever see that picture of his leg?
Yes, absolutely.
What was going on in that picture, rodeo historian?
Well, he'd broke his leg like 5 or 6 times, that right leg, from getting horses jerked down on him. You know, he was just, they didn't call him Wild Horse Crosby for nothing, you know.
Well, I did see a lot of pictures where his front,
Yeah.
the front
Yeah.
two feet of his horses are off the ground.
Yeah. And
in the
at
middle
one
of that
time
jerk.
was so bad, and they wanted to cut his leg off, and he wouldn't let him. And I guess he put maggots on his to eat the flesh, that gangrene, and saved his leg. But it's sure a pitiful looking leg, wasn't it?
Rodeo historians in for the weak stomach when you go back to investigating that far.
I know.
For sure.
I know. And that picture, I think, was in Life magazine, I believe.
Boy, it's really something else.
I know.
It's one of the most famous pictures in rodeo history, and the one where he's driving the Jeep.
Yeah, yeah.
Boy, that's a
And
good
of course,
one.
he got killed driving a Jeep too.
Yeah, I've been through that pass a couple
Mm-hmm.
times, and
Jim said that he would actually, at times, would cut several strands of his cinch and just leave 3 or 4 strands and go tie a steer just to be Wild Horse Crosby.
whew, that sounds pretty wild.
Right, right.
So I got to get back on subject here, Dad. Growing up in the New Mexico territories, coming up, learning how to rodeo. Who were some of the guys that you roped with? Who are some of the guys you competed against that some people might have heard of today?
Well, there were several of them. Homer Pettigrew's nephews was all around there, and there was named Leatherwoods, and they went a lot in the USTRC. Then there was a black boy named Sylvester Mayfield. Me and him was in the same class in high school. He went to the finals a couple of times, and he's got a young man now that won the world last year. It happened to be his son. Then there was another one down there by the name of Gary Good. He won the world in the steer roping. He roped calves and everything the same time we did, and he was a tough calf roper. Me and Gary, we kind of took turns winning the state high school deal. He won it a couple of times, and I won it a couple of times. There was a tough bunch of kids grew up around Clovis.
What about Roy Cooper? Did you?
Roy Cooper, right there. He lived about 80 miles south of us, and he was all roping around there at the same time.
Yeah, I left off the Coopers. I meant to mention him, but Jimmy and Tuff was the 2 old guys that started that whole bunch.
All
2
the-
brothers.
All the goods, those were
Yeah.
still tough ropers to
Oh,
this
yeah.
day.
Yep.
Roy was a year younger than me, and Jimmy was 2 years younger than I was.
Yep.
And we all grew up around there together, roping at all the ropings and the jackpots around.
Right, right. There's sure a lot of talent came from out there.
Yeah, Sylvester Mayfield. Shad is his kid, world champion last year.
Right.
I saw a big billboard, something about Clovis, New Mexico, home of Shad Mayfield the other day on I-40.
Yeah.
It's really good to see that.
Huh.
Cowboys getting that kind of attention from their hometowns like Clovis.
Whereabouts is Clovis, New Mexico?
Clovis is 100 miles southwest of Amarillo,
Okay. So not too far from the Texas line then.
8 miles.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy, Jimbo. They built a indoor arena there. They built an indoor arena there, and they needed an indoor arena there just as bad as they needed an indoor arena anywhere in the United States.
Just for shade.
Shade, wind,
Yeah.
Our windiest day here seems to be a calm day out there, Jimbo.
Really.
So they needed an indoor arena there just about as bad as they needed one anywhere. And I went to my rookie year somewhere right in there. I went to the rodeo there, and it was outside, and a storm rolled through, sandstorm, and you couldn't even see. And they didn't stop the rodeo or nothing. They just kept going. It's normal for those folks out there.
Yeah, I've heard that.
They don't know the difference.
No,
Yeah.
no. You can rope in that. You're a roping son of a gun, Jimbo, because there were some guys that looked like their rope stopped in midair
Probably
and then
did.
blew back at them.
It probably did.
Never seen anything like it to this day. To this day, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. Now, is that near what they call the Badlands? Where's the Badlands in New Mexico?
I'm going to have to say this is the
Right,
foot of them anyway.
ground zero.
Possibly. Is that considered the Badlands right there?
Badlands in South Dakota, aren't they?
Well, I think there's Badlands in New Mexico too, I
New
think.
Mexico Badlands. I'm pretty sure they're there.
Yep.
Billy the Kid and some guys are hanging out in the Badlands right
Yeah.
there of New Mexico. So, I'm sorry. So, you branch out. What's your main event?
My main event?
Right out of high school, going into college, and you're starting your rodeo career.
Well, real and truly, my main event was riding saddle broncs. I rode saddle broncs for 20 years. But I also roped K's and bulldogged and team roped plumb through college and starting up my amateur rodeos. And I really wasn't big enough to bulldog, but I sure did like it.
I saw a picture. Cody got a picture here of you riding a saddle bronc coming out of the chute. Looks like that picture of Jesse James, that real famous rodeo picture. That's what it reminded me of,
I've always wondered how that turned out on that picture. I don't really know, but it
Well, he's still here.
pretty darn wild picture, isn't it, Jimbo?
Well, that picture you got, that horse fell right there.
Oh, okay.
I got to rewrite.
Well, it made for one heck of a wild picture.
It
though,
did.
didn't
It is a
Jimbo?
wild picture.
That's all that matters on that one.
Yeah, he bumped my head on the announcer stand.
Yeah.
So you went around riding saddle broncs, 20 years. I saw some pictures of you in an old scrapbook of somebody's riding bareback horses too.
That was a short-lived event.
So I'm just trying to check off the marks, trying to find some events you didn't do. What about wild cow milking? Did you ever do much wild cow milking?
I've done quite a bit of wild cow milking going up through my years. I went at the Clovis PRCA rodeo. They had wild cow milking, and me and a man named Ron Brunson went one year. And about the only, I never did do the chuck wagon race.
No chuck wagon racing. You own chuck wagon and you didn't race it?
Nope, never did race it. Them mules wouldn't go very fast.
You did chuck wagon trotting.
Yep, mainly walking.
I always wondered on them old chuck wagons, Jimbo, on them cattle drives. I mean, it had to be some pretty wild. They didn't have roads that they maintained and graded. I mean, I know what my driveway does when it rains quite a bit.
Right.
There's some washouts we can't drive a four-wheel drive truck through down that thing.
And crossing those rivers and stuff, how did they do that?
I don't know.
I mean,
Did you ever cross a river on a chuck wagon?
Well, they called them rivers out there in New Mexico. They wouldn't even be a good creek here.
Well, they crossed some bodies of water in a chuck wagon anyway.
Right. Yeah.
They have crossed Canadian River with that chuck wagon that my dad had, and the chuck box did float off of it, floated down the river, and they had to go rope it and drag it up on the bank.
But they made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some tough times for sure.
Well, they had to get it. Had to get it there, had to get it done.
Yeah, and those cowboys had to eat, But
Once you got there, you had to go back, Jimbo.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
yeah, that's true.
That's the problem. You got there. I wonder, did they do some backhauling on anything? Did they drive sheep back or anything like truckers do now? They try to catch another load on the way back, cattle drivers back then?
I've never heard of them doing it. But,
Makes you wonder.
yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Surely they bought some trading stock, something, brought something back with them.
Well, I imagine they just drove the chuck wagon back and doctored the hangovers all them cowboys had.
I would have lost all my money in the saloon the
What-
night before we went back.
What were
All
they
of it.
doing on the Matador when they took those chuck wagons out? Were they just working the calves, or were they driving cattle, or?
They would take it out on spring works and brand all the calves. They would gather in front of them and work them calves, then throw them behind them. And pull the chuck wagon up and gather in front of them, throw behind them. And it stayed, the spring works lasted 2 months. When, about the time they got done with the spring works, they'd come home, fix everything on the wagon, and send all the cowboys to town. They'd be in town about a week, and they'd come back, and they'd start all over, and they'd get ready to go to shipping.
Yep. So the spring working just almost turned into the shipping. I mean, just from the length of time.
Right.
It's kind of like those guys that painted the Golden Gate Bridge. They'd start, and by the time they get done, it was time to start back, go the other direction.
That sounds pretty good. Back to saddle bronc riding. So, about how old were you when you quit saddle bronc riding, and why did you quit saddle bronc riding and start moving towards the time event into the arena? Well,
I was at Cheyenne. The first time I went to Cheyenne, when I had my card, they had aluminum gates set up across the track over there. They didn't have the big rolling fence that they've got now. They had aluminum gates, and that horse I was riding jumped the aluminum gates. The pickup man jumped the gates right behind me, that's after me. And I looked back and seen him, and this horse had quit bucking. He had just run, and I took my hack rein, and I went to whooping him. The PRCA fined me $250 for doing that.
Wow.
Can't put a price on a good time sometimes.
But a couple of years later, I had a horse that was just jumping and lunging there at Cheyenne, and I broke my ankle. And me and my little family about starved to death, so I got well, and that's the last one I entered.
That's a good one to quit at.
That's a good career move, I'd say.
That was a real good career move. So the first year you entered Cheyenne, what was that? The one you got the fine in that you remember so
79.
well. 1979.
Yep.
How'd you get hooked up with Cotton Lee to help you in the steer roping?
Him and my dad was
Just good friends.
was
Yeah.
personal friends.
Yeah. See. Yep.
That place that he had there, did y'all have that at the time where you had the arena and the row of barns there that was kind of right across the way from the sale barn, about a block?
I was a young kid whenever he acquired that. I was about 5 or 6 years old.
So did you have a lot of guys there roping all the time in that
All
arena?
the time. All the boys we talked about, Sylvester and Gary Good and the Pettigrews, they'd all come over and we'd rope and have little quarter jackpots and everything.
Little match ropings and stuff.
We had match ropings every day.
Match roping used to be a pretty big deal.
Sometimes just be for a hair pull out of the arm.
Well, Jimbo, it got pretty bad around our house on some matches sometimes. Hair pulls out of the legs. Hair pulls out of the big toe. And I ain't gonna tell you where we ended up pulling hair out of. They got competitive, running down the rope, tying, whatever you were doing, playing pig on the dummy, hair pull. I mean, lots of hair pulling. I ain't got a hair left on my leg to this day.
Yeah.
It's plumb bald.
Well,
I don't shave them.
better
I
than
just pull
losing
it all
money.
out.
It's better than losing money, though.
Yeah.
I guess.
I guess so. You
Wow.
always think you can grow some more hair, but
Did they have much winter out there in Clovis?
You know, the winters there, they would be pretty harsh because of the wind.
Yeah.
Like here in Oklahoma, you've got about 6 weeks or 2 months of hard winter.
Mm-hmm.
Clovis, you'd have about 3 months.
Really?
Yeah.
I just wondered how if you got to rope the year round pretty much, or you shut her down for the winter.
As long as the ground wasn't froze,
Right.
we'd rope.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Jimbo, we grow up. They rope 3 times a day growing up at our house, just like most folks ate. It was
Yeah.
and when the ground wasn't frozen, we didn't do a whole lot of team roping. So they kept a fire going in the head box the whole time. Just about, it was probably about like that first 59 you were telling me about.
Mm-hmm.
But it was every winter at our house. That's
Right, right.
That's how we roped.
Wow.
So no matter how bad a job I did working the chute, I never got fired for it either.
Right. They're the only one. You're the only one that could get out there, probably.
No, heck, there was quite a few guys out there roping in the cold, a handful of them.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, that's good training, though. made you tough.
Yep. We roped no matter what growing
Right,
up.
right,
Every season.
right.
Outside.
Right.
The only thing we didn't have were lights growing up.
That's how we supplemented our living, with a rope and running barrels.
Yeah.
That's what we done.
Had to take it pretty serious, didn't you?
So when you transformed from riding saddle broncs to a timed event, steer roping, had you been steer roping quite a bit before, or had it been on your mind that's what you wanted to do?
It had been on my mind. That's what I always wanted to do because of my dad. The first year I really took steer roping serious was in '79, and first roping I went to was at Tucumcari, New Mexico. The fees was like $750. We scrimped and saved 3 or 4 months for me to get enough money to go enter. But I did, and I didn't win nothing. And I didn't win a whole lot that year. But the next year, I roped all winter, and I went to the finals the first time in '80.
1980.
Where'd they have the finals that year?
It was at Laramie, Wyoming,
Yeah.
and first final I didn't place in but one go around, but I went fourth in the average.
Yeah.
So
Pretty good.
They did stuff a little different back then at the national finals. I've heard tell of anyway. Is it true they used to have at the Laramie one parimutuel betting
yes, they had parimutuel.
on the steer ropers?
Yes, they had a parimutuel betting. They took 16 steer ropers instead of 15, and they would have like 2 8-horse races and have parimutuel betting on 2 rounds of each go round.
So they'd handicap them just like a horse race, and you could go lay your money down
Yes.
10-1 odds on whoever.
Who handicapped them, I wonder?
Hyde Merritt,
Hyde?
it was putting a deal on, and he had kind of a committee that stayed
Yeah.
back there. And
Because you'd have to be pretty good or you'd get hurt pretty bad on that.
Well, they've had it since then in modern times, and there were a couple guys that spoiled the whole deal.
Yeah.
A couple long shots that hit that all the steer ropers were betting on,
Yeah.
So
You know, the one thing that surprised me the first time I went to Vegas during the rodeo, I was ready to make a bet or something. I went up there and they said, no, we don't touch the rodeo. And I thought they bet on everything out there, and they don't mess with the rodeo.
well, me and you could sit there and bet on it if we want.
Well, I know it, but that just surprised me, because they set a line on everything out
Yeah,
there.
you would think. Why don't they
Right.
set a line on the
I
rodeo?
don't know. I don't know if they made a deal with the PRCA or what, but they don't do it.
Well, I think they should.
Well, you'd think.
Maybe you ought to go out there, talk to them about it, Jimbo.
Yeah. Well, I'll be out there.
You could set the line. Tell them you'll set the line for them,
Right. Yeah.
as long as they got the cash to back it up.
Right.
Rodeo historian, you know your stuff.
Yep. I'm not too busy playing craps.
I want to ask you about all that one of these days.
We'll have to go sometime.
With your Uncle Joe, he was trying to show me one time. This is how you do it. This is how you got to hold them.
Yeah. He
But
don't
anyway, I don't want to get you in trouble out there. So,
know. No.
but anyway, Jimbo's a professional gambler. Now that's what he is, Dad. Professional gambler that he's retired from the oil field.
Well, I can kind of relate to that.
We'll see how that lasts. It might not last about one season.
Well, my dad, he's a professional poker player now.
I know.
So
My dad loved to play poker. Yep.
my granddad, he was a professional gambler, Jimbo.
A lot of those old cowboys,
other
they all
side.
played dominoes or pitch or something. That was just kind of in their DNA.
His granddad,
This guy was
on
a little
his mom's
different.
side, 9-time world champion domino player.
Yeah. Huh.
But that's all he did was gamble the
Right.
whole time I knew him, Jimbo. That was it.
Right. Right. Well, there's guys that are good enough to make a living at it,
Well, I mean,
but most of the guys just support those guys.
some days you have a bad day every now and then. I mean,
Right.
there ain't a gambler that didn't go broke, but he gambled right till the end, I guess.
Right.
That's all he did. So he must have been pretty good.
You know what they say: money won's twice as sweet as money earned.
He just didn't want to work very hard, Jimbo. So
Right.
he had to put his mind to gambling.
Right.
You get good at anything when you do it enough, I guess.
Whenever I first knew my father-in-law, he was a horse trader and traded good and went hard. He bought slaughter horses for years, and him and my dad partnered on a lot of riding horses, and he went hard and worked hard when he done it.
Right.
So
You have to.
Every kind of horse they traded. Both sides of the family I come from, Jimbo, are horse traders.
Speaking of trading horses or killing horses or whatever, what's the story on Dutch? I've heard that story, and I'd like to hear it from you.
I bought Dutch in La Junta, Colorado on the loose, and they wasn't riding him. The story was that he'd been bucking him off in a feed yard. Well, I took him home and I rode him a few times, and I hauled him to Clovis. And my dad said, "That's the best looking steer horse prospect you've come up with." And I said, "Well, I like him pretty good." And I left him there with my dad, and he pinned cattle back on him for about 90 days, and went to logging him some, and whenever I showed back up next time at Clovis, I tied one steer on him, and then I went to hauling him.
How long did you ride him?
I just rode him a year,
Yeah.
sold him to T. Woman.
Yeah. And the rest is history. Quite a record.
They say there's a big picture of him in Oklahoma City in the Quarter Horse Museum.
Really. Yeah.
Amarillo, I think.
Everybody knew that horse.
You know, the year he did haul him, Jimbo, his first steer kicked loose at the NFR, because I watched this tape a while back, and then either won or placed in the next 7 rounds.
Wow.
Makes you wonder what would happen if that steer wouldn't have kicked loose. But
Yeah.
that was a great.
I know
great
what would
horse.
have happened. He'd won first
Well,
round.
one of the other ones, the horse fell down.
Yeah.
The horse fell.
That's the reason he
In
didn't.
that
place
one
in
go
that
around, I jumped up and tied him, and I liked one place of placing in the go around.
He was one out. The horse got up and ended up working perfect.
Yeah.
And T Woman, how many times that horse win Horse of the Year after that, Jimbo?
I don't know. I really don't. I should, but I don't.
Do you know, Dad?
I don't know either.
5 times, 8 times, something. An astronomical amount of times.
Yeah, just over and over and over.
Very good horse. I think T retired him after he won the average on him at the NFR. He brought him back once or twice, but
Right.
officially retired the first time, I think, after he won the average on him. Great horse.
Yeah, absolutely. Famous horse.
Did you ever have any other horses that were Horse of the Year besides Dutch?
I had a gray horse one time that Buddy Cockrell trained, and he'd been sold 2 or 3 times before I got my hands on him. And that horse wasn't very good in the box, but he was real good in the field. He called him Bo, that's what I called him. And I named him after that lady that in the movies, Bo Derek, because she was number 10.
He must have been a good-looking horse.
Yep.
He was one of my favorites. I'm a sucker for 2 things: big-butted horses and little-waisted women.
Oh, 4-time. Lauren, you got
Yeah.
a fact checker over here.
Yep. Good deal.
4-time AQHA PRCA Horse of the Year.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
Yes. Yes.
That's a good horse.
Yep. So where all did you rope at the finals over that span?
I roped at Laramie 2 times, and the rest of the time was a lazy E.
Okay. That's a big, nice arena down there, isn't it?
That's a big, nice arena. That's what it was built for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it used to be on. It still may be on their gates. A steer roper right there across the lazy E pattern right there.
Yeah. I haven't been down there in a long time, but it was a pleasure just to rope there, you know.
Our steer roping director at the time, Mr. James Allen, and Mr. Gaylord, they were together and designed that arena.
Right.
I wonder if Delbert helped him out. Any advice on that?
I'm sure he probably did.
He said, "Make her big, Ed." Probably.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
You know, him, Gaylord and Delbert, they were kind of partners on some dirt business at that time.
Yeah, I remember they were good friends. Seemed like.
And Johnny Miller was down there. I don't know if he was down there when they actually built it or not, but he was down there working early on for Ed, helping him on them training horses and stuff, team roping horses.
I believe it was 1984 when they opened that baby up.
Yeah.
First national final steer roping. There.
So he probably had a lot of input on it, and it showed. It was a show place.
It still is. It's a first class facility.
Sure is.
They kept a lot of rodeo events going last year. A lot of high school national finals and bridges national final. It seemed like almost everything but the PRCA national finals was held there last year.
We had our club finals there 3 or 4 times, and we what we paid Ed probably didn't even pay for turning the lights on, but he was just letting us, helped us out, and it was really nice.
They moved the BFI down there last year too.
Yep, they said they're moving her back to Nevada now that all the stuff's over after this year.
Yeah.
They had the BFI during the timed event this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, that's a good roping.
Yeah.
That's a good place to have it. They're going to move it anywhere. May as well be there.
Yeah.
May as well be. What about that big post roping they used to have, the OS Ranch roping in Post, Texas?
I didn't get to go to it, but one time I got to go to the last one. And it was a big, prestigious roping, just like the Ben Johnson or San Angelo and Post. That was, and Clovis. That was the 4 big ropings of the year. And I finally got an invite, and I got to go to the last one, and I went second behind Phil Line.
Old Phil Line. Boy, that guy, he came out of retirement just to show everyone that I guess Guy Allen could be beat, possibly. I'm not sure if that's the reason he came out of retirement, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the driving forces. And he came out of retirement, won the world, and then retired again, Jimbo.
Yeah, he was a real cowboy. I mean, he could do it all.
Yeah, I remember we used to stay with him up at Cheyenne, and he'd always get a room at the Little America, and somehow we'd end up at Little America in Phil Lyon's room.
I saw him on a hunting show here. Oh, it's been several years ago, but he was a big hunter, and he was a hunting guide and stuff out in New Mexico some also. And he'd lost a couple of his fingers, I think, from a team roping in Amarillo. After he was old, I mean, he's way up there in years, and he's out there. He said he didn't even know how it happened, doesn't know if it got in a coil or what, but when he's done, he's missing part of his hand.
He probably went ahead and finished the roping.
Probably did. He should have, and probably ran another steer.
Or 10.
Yeah.
No telling about that guy.
Well, I just thought that isn't that something to go through all he did, bull riding the whole deal, and then as an old man getting the team rope and lose a part of your hand. But,
yeah, it probably didn't even bother him.
No.
He's a tough old guy. They don't make them like them guys anymore.
No, I know it.
That's for sure. One of 3 guys to make the national finals in the bull riding and the steer roping, but the only guy to win the world in both. I don't know if he won the world in the bull riding.
Yes, he did.
The only guy to win the world in both, because I thought I saw a picture on him.
He won the average in the calf roping bull riding the same year at the finals.
Wow.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
In the same year, Ace Berry won the bareback riding the team rope.
Yeah, I know. That was the same year. That was odd about that,
Now, we need to get with old Ace Berry. They say he's still around, Jimbo.
Around here?
No, but
I mean, I didn't know. He's from over there around Dewey. I didn't know if I just hadn't heard anything about him in a long time.
I haven't either, but somebody told me the other day he's still alive. So
Yeah.
we ought to go find him and do a talk with him one
Yeah.
of these days.
Johnny Joe run him down for us.
We'll call Johnny Joe up.
There you go.
All right. We get off subject sometimes, every now and then.
That one was my fault.
So the big prestigious ropings. We've been on both sides of the coin on those, helping them out with the production end of them, and then roping in them. How do they actually work? Like San Angelo, how do you end up getting an invitation to rope in a roping like that back when you were roping?
Well, whenever I first started going, they invited all of last year's or this year's top 15, plus past world champions and past champions of San Angelo. That's how you got an invite to go to San Angelo 25 years ago.
J.P. Wickett said he made the finals twice before they invited him, but I don't blame him on that, really.
And then they said if you ever turned her down, you might not get an invite for a while.
Yeah. I think that it's almost a set deal. you're not hurt or something and you turn the invite down or don't show up, you don't. Kelly Corbin was telling us about it in here a while back.
Yeah.
It was several years before he was invited back for some reason or another.
The last time I was invited was last year I won Cheyenne, was in 11, and they called and invited me, and I told them I'd rather not come, but I had a son that sure would like to go.
They let me in that year, thank God. I sure appreciate that, Dad. That's a great roping to rope in.
What was it like winning Cheyenne?
To me, it's the highlight of my career. You know, it's all the greatest ropers are there, and even the guys that they consider not the greatest ropers, they rope just as good. They just don't go.
Right, sure.
So it pays good and it's prestigious to win it. And even today they say, "Well, I remember whenever you won Cheyenne."
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
that sticks with you for the rest of your life. You won it that last time at age 57. How'd that all go down?
Well, I hadn't even been practicing that year, and when I entered Cheyenne, I entered a couple of seniors ropings to get practiced up, and me and Cody was riding the same horse, and he was gone with him most of the time. So I run down the rope a little bit and got ready.
What's it take to win Cheyenne? I mean, a lot of things have to fall in place. I know you have to draw good.
You have to draw good, is number one. Don't miss. You know, there's a lot of good ropers that had a hard time roping fresh cattle.
Right.
You know, you don't rope one of those steers on the gain. You run up on him, let him move away from you when you rope him. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of them people don't understand, a fresh steer, you can drive him anywhere you want to go.
Keep him off that left fence.
Keep him off that left fence. And if you can make one of them steers run up on him and make him go to the right a little bit, you can still have the same go and go a little bit down the pin and still have the same go as you do at most rodeos.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
We had some great times there at Cheyenne, Jimbo.
Yeah,
growing up.
I bet.
He won. That was always a good place for when Dad won a little money. If he won some money in the first round, you know, and it was always a great place we'd go out and shop, and cause never see another poor day when you place in the first go round at Cheyenne over there, Jimbo.
I won the first go around at Cheyenne 8 times.
Is that right?
Won it 4 years in a row once.
Huh. Well, that's something. Probably won't nobody ever do that again.
Yeah, he's placed it in the top, you know, in the average at Cheyenne quite a few times and placed in a whole bunch of go-rounds there.
Yeah.
I think I went 34 years in a row, and I think I placed like 24 or 5 of them.
Well, that's more than just drawing. I mean, you have to be doing something else right, too.
Yeah. I remember in 1980, I didn't do any good on my first one, and I waited around there all week to run my second one. And he run real hard, and I tied him 17-9, win the second to go round. That's the first year I went to the final. I placed there, and I placed at Sheridan, placed at Veneta, and placed at McAllister, Oklahoma.
That was about all the steer opens back then,
Yeah,
Jimbo.
yeah, you know.
Except for Pendleton.
You know,
Yeah.
I didn't go to the Northwest. I think that's the only rodeo I went to. I didn't place at. Maybe was I placed at Pecos. I don't think I placed at Veneta.
Had Walla Walla up there. Used to have Walla Walla at Pendleton. You know, when
Yeah,
you
I've
make
been
that
to
same
it.
time you're up there.
Yeah, I've been up there. We've been to Lewiston, Walla Walla, Ellensburg, Pendleton. We even flew up there for one time that was off in the middle of nowhere during the middle of the year when there was no other thing around it one time, Jimbo.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of that.
And they had a
Spokane,
few-
maybe, I'm not sure.
They had a few in Wyoming, you know, Douglas and maybe Thermopolis and I don't know where all, but they always had a handful of RCA rodeos in Wyoming besides Cheyenne, you know.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, Wyoming's been a good steer roping state for a long time.
Yep.
For a long time. Having the steers at Cheyenne, how did that come about? We were in the steer business for quite some time, Jimbo. If you didn't know, we had all the OSRC ropings, and we were one of the only steer roping stock contractors in business at one time. We were, if not the only one. So, Cheyenne, how did we come about providing the steers up at Cheyenne, Wyoming?
Well, we was up there roping, and a rumor was going around the man that had the steers didn't want to do it anymore. He lived in the Northwest, and he didn't want to do it anymore. So I just went around and I talked to Tommy Hersick, told him I'd like a chance to bid on it. And the next February they called me and asked me to bid on it, and we got it. And we put Cheyenne on for 11 years.
What all does it entail to put together a set of steers for Cheyenne when you were doing it?
Now, are we talking bulldog and cattle and everything? Or just steer rope?
Just the steer rope.
Okay.
Just the steer rope. And later on, they roped them in the steer rope, and then they turned around and roped them in the team roping.
Okay.
But the contract called for 235 head of steers. And so you had to buy 270 or 80 to sort 235 from. Whenever you got done, then you had to have them there a week early, and they had a cattle drive from 4 or 5 miles north of town, down through town to the Cheyenne Frontier Days grounds. And then the next day you go in there and you sort your short round cattle off of them, and wrap your cattle that you can rope during the performances. When we first started, they run the whole first go-round before the rodeo started. And then the next morning they would run everything except the people that was up in the performances.
Yeah, on Friday morning, they used to run the entire first go-round. And Saturday morning, everybody else that didn't go, like he said, in the performances. Friday, Saturday. Cheyenne. I didn't mind roping in the performances there. It seemed like the cattle, you got to rope a little later in the day, and the cattle were a little more drawed if it's a little more hot.
A lot of time, though, it rained in the afternoon up there.
Yeah.
I know.
A lot of time the rain would blow in the afternoon.
Yeah,
there.
most of the guys would rather rope in the morning just because of avoid that rain during the performance.
We'd haul all them cattle up there in the semi, Jimbo, and we'd kill ourselves getting them up there, actually, just one trip after another.
Right.
And we dropped them cattle off. How many miles north of town was that?
It was
5?
5 miles north of town.
5 or 10 miles north of town. I'm not sure. We drop them all off there, and the bulldog and steers were there. And would they throw the roping calves in with them?
No.
Everything but the roping calves. All the time to be
Anything that had horns.
They throw them all in this big pasture up north of town. And then,
You had to drive them to.
yeah, when
Yeah.
officially, I guess the official start of Cheyenne Frontier Days is.
They had a chuck wagon breakfast after that morning, and then they would gather the cattle and drive them to town.
I knew when Merritt's had the cattle up there, they used to drive them to town. I didn't know if they still did or anything about it.
Well, they shut down the interstate, Jimbo.
Yeah.
I-25, and you drive
Well,
them
in
down the
Wyoming, though, it
interstate.
couldn't have been that much on the interstate.
And then they shut. No, I mean, heck, they shut down the interstate, and they even shut down the exits so the cattle don't run off and veer off up the exits. And then you got to take an exit with the cattle off the interstate. Turn at a stoplight here. We'd always try to scatter a few of them, so you have to rope them off the golf course there, because that's always a good time. And then you got to turn at the stoplight there by the golf course, Jimbo, and then drive them past the golf course and through the rodeo grounds around the track, and then into the pens.
And then you had to sort.
Well, we had all this help to drive them there. Listen, Jimbo, this is pretty fun. We had all these senators and high class people. People may have paid a lot of money to go on this cattle drive, and it was real fun and prestigious to go on it. We got them all to the pens, and then it was just us left to sort them all.
Yeah. That's the way it usually goes.
Well, Shirley was there the first couple years. She was the boss back there.
About the second year we was there, there was about 10 bulldoggers right there in a little bunch. I rode in front of them and I turned them over at the golf course. This guy says, "What are you doing?" And I says, "My boys need to have a little fun." I said, "They're not mine."
We've heard all kind of stories, steers jumping in swimming pools and all kind of stuff on the cattle drive.
But that's part of Cheyenne. I mean, that's part of it.
Oh yeah, it was real eye opening, and it felt real prestigious to be a part of all that. You
Right.
know, just the history of Cheyenne. Every time we'd go up there, and we'd stay for the whole duration. And boy, howdy, I had a lot of fun up there, Jimbo.
I bet. How many years did y'all do the cattle up there?
11 years.
11 years. That's a long time.
I made a lot of memories for folks up there, Jimbo.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of them. That altitude it makes that beer a lot stronger.
Right, right.
Well, sometimes I'd have to leave. I'd get back and they'd say, "Is Cody the black sheep of the family?"
That's right. I am. I am. That's all right.
Did you ever wonder if he was going to mount to anything?
Well, I always knew it was, but I thought I might be looking at him behind bars.
Yeah. You got to be proud of what him and Lauren's done with this museum, though, aren't you?
Oh, I'm proud of everything they've done.
Isn't this something?
This is what Cody's born to do.
I know it. I
It
think
is.
so. He found his niche.
Yeah, he did.
Well, I love living up here in Pawhuska, Jimbo.
Yep. We love you up here.
What about making the NFR the first few times?
Well, the first time I went,
Was it a big a deal when you got up there as you thought it was going to be when you
it
left?
really wasn't to me. Like I said, the first year I went, I placed one go around and I went fourth in the average, and they gave me a check for $400. And I got home, told my dad, I said, "I want to sell that old horse." He says, "What for?" And I says, "It don't pay enough for me to go up down the road." He says, "No, you've got to go one more time just to show everybody it wasn't a mistake." So I ended up going 8 more times. But whenever it moved to Guthrie, the prize money got a lot better. During the same time, James Allen was a steer roping director, and it went the very first year he was steer roping director. It went from 12 rodeos in the steer roping to 42, and it just grew and grew and grew the whole time he was steer roping director, and it hadn't quit. It's still good.
I feel like the next big step for steer roping maybe after that, maybe when Mac Altizer got involved with steer roping and really started taking it at all of his rodeos then. He had a lot of the old rodeos that had it, but he also had some rodeos like in Georgia
Yeah, in Florida.
and Florida, and he took the event with him there, and I feel like he probably changed the game a little bit in steer roping. And then Delbert did a good job.
Delbert did a good job.
And I gotta say, old JP Wickett, he's opened a lot of doors right here. He's opened a lot of doors for steer roping. They've got to rope a lot of places that they said they'll never be able to rope, and he took it there. So,
JP's done a good job.
gotta take my hat off to him too. Is he the current director
He's
for that?
the current director. I don't know how much longer he's going to want to do it. He's been
He's been there
director
for
now
quite a while.
I know at least 10 years.
Well, I hadn't roped in 5 years, so.
Yep. So, and you know, I don't know how much longer he'll want to do it, but as long as he wants to do it, he's got my vote.
Well, he's taken it a lot of places where there's only been there once, and some of them they've had it every year since then. You know, he's taken it a lot of places that a lot of people said it might not ever go. So I'm glad to see that.
You know, just like Ponca City over here, J. Paul Williams, he opens the door for that deal, and they're still roping steers.
Oh yeah, it takes steer ropers wanting to keep this stuff going. But I see some good trajectory with it right now. There's a lot of guys that I never really even heard of or would even thought they'd be roping steers competitively, but there's enough money up for grabs. It looks like it's drawing a lot of interest right now.
It is. There's like out here at the Osage roping, there was 20 new boys roping there last week during the Delbert Collar. You you never thought would ever rope steers that are roping steers now.
Well, a lot of the top calf ropers are roping steers. A lot of the top team ropers are roping steers, it looks like.
I saw Bobby Brock's name in the bee roping, and people like that. And
He's a guy they just don't know what to do with, Jimbo. How old is Bobby?
I guess Bobby's probably in his early 70s.
He's got to be in his early 70s.
yeah,
So, he can compete with anybody. But he has a little bit of a hard time competing with the open ropers out there and the setup they have. But he demolishes all the bee ropers, early 70s-year-old man. So they're always in a quandary with what to do with him, I feel like, because
it's kind of a tweener.
well, he's the top bee roper.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, he's a 70-something-year-old man,
Isn't
and
that
it's pretty
something?
unbelievable.
Right.
Him and who they should do a match roping with? Him and Dan Fisher. Bobby Brock and Dan Fisher need to have a match roping. I think that'd be a good one.
I won't untie steers.
Want to untie steers? I want to punch them up in the back, and that's it. Help load them and watch it. It'll be darn good watching, I think.
Yeah, I think, didn't they say that Dan turned 70 out there on Father's Day that during the Ben Johnson roping? I think that was his birthday.
I can't think of two 70-year-old steer ropers that's ever matched. It'd be a
No,
historic match.
probably
It'd be a
not.
good watching match,
Right.
too. So that's something for us to try to put together here next year at the Ben Johnson Forum, Jimbo. I think they should have the match of
Yeah,
Dan versus Bobby.
Right. We can come up with a catchy name for it.
Yeah, I don't know. They got over 100 years of steer roping between them, I'm sure. So that'd be a good one. Got off subject again. Speaking of the Ben Johnson, what makes this roping over here a little bit different than most ropings?
Oh, they get a long start here, and whenever you turn them out in that arena, it's kind of like turning them outside. It's a big old long pin, and I don't know how long Ben Johnson's been going on. How many years it's been?
Well, it started in 54.
54. That'll make it 67 years
Yeah.
this year. It's about the only roping I never did win that I wanted to win too. I placed in go rounds and tied the fastest steer, and me and you win the father-son steer roping one year.
Because he roped good that day, Jimbo.
Carried you.
Horrible. Yes, he
Yeah.
did.
And but I've never won the roping, and it's about the only roping that I went to that I've never won that I really wanted to.
Right. Yeah, it's prestigious, around the country, everybody knows about the Ben Johnson. It's right up there.
Winning ropings. Someone was telling me a while back about you winning San Angelo. It'd been a long year. San Angelo's in the fall, when you're roping for a living and you ain't got much money in the bank when it rolls around. It's
Winter coming on.
It's $800 to enter San Angelo, but he went anyway. But can you fill us in on that San Angelo story real quick, Dad? Just because I want to hear it right from you instead of the guy that told it to me.
I didn't win very much that year. I didn't make the finals. The year I went San Angelo. And my invite come, and the fees was $1,000. And my wife said, "You going to San Angelo?" This was like 2 or 3 days before. And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to San Angelo." She said, "Well, you hadn't even been on your horse in a month." I said, "Yeah, I have. I rode him yesterday." Anyway, I went down there and I placed in 3 go rounds and went the average. Well, I didn't call home and tell my wife what I'd done. And to go back a little bit, some friends of ours down there called Sharp and asked them who they needed to buy in the gold in the Calcutta, and she said, "Well, dang sure don't buy Rocky Garnett." Because he hadn't been on his horse in a month, and he hadn't been roping and practicing, he won't win nothing. I may divorce him when he gets home. Anyway, I come home, and I got home we drove all night to get home. I got home just as Cody and his sisters was getting on the bus to go to school. I come in there and I plopped down on the couch. She says, "Well, how did you do?" I said, "I done okay." Then she jumped on me. She says, "They called and told me you won it. How come you didn't call and tell me?"
She knew it.
Then she called me lots of choice names.
Yeah.
My mom's a fireball, Jimbo.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ever hear that Jeff Foxworthy? Something about let the cigarette flick in her mouth while she's telling the highway patrolman to kiss her ass. That always reminded me of my mom, because she smokes some cigarettes, the long skinny ones. And sometimes she can get an ash going about like that. Jimbo, she can talk, and the cigarette's flicking all like that, and the ash don't break off. The only time they ever really broke off, she was cutting my hair, and she'd get the shakes, and she'd have a cigarette. She'd send my dang ear.
Oh.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah. Is that why you don't like haircuts to this day?
That's what turned me off on haircuts, Jimbo.
Yeah.
I'm serious. She'd have a cigarette here. She'd have the cigarette, the scissors right here, Jimbo. And she'd get the shakes as she was cutting my hair. Scissors. I don't know if I'm going to get my ear cut off or singed in the air with the cigarette every time.
I'll tell you a funny story about her and Cody. He was getting ready to go to school one
Here
morning.
we go.
And we had a whole house full of people. They was on all the beds and the couches and the chairs. And she said, "Now, Cody, you be quiet this morning. Don't turn on the TV, because everybody got in late, and let them sleep." Well, what'd he do? He goes over and turns the TV on. Made her mad. And she was barefooted, and she kicked him in the butt and broke her toe. Cody was squalling, and then he seen her looked over there, and she was hopping around on one foot, holding her toe, and he says, "My butt must be pretty hard." And by that time I got up and I told my wife, I said, "I hope you learned something like that." She said, "I did. I'll never kick him again barefooted."
She went and put her boots on. After
Yeah,
that,
right.
Pointy-toed boots with a silver concho on the
Right.
end. I'm just kidding. Just kidding about that one. What do you think about the way the horses are going right now?
I'll tell you, it's crazy. I went to Clovis to the horse sale, Clovis horse sale the other day, and I took a horse I thought would bring $5,000 or $6,000, and he bring twice that. They had a ranch horse competition there, and the cheapest one, bring like 25,000. Bring from 25 to 60,000. Those horses did. And none of them look like a steer horse, but they were nice horses.
Well, I'm talking about the steer horse market in particular right now. I mean, they're costing as much as a new pickup, you know. Not a decked out pickup, but a new pickup.
There ain't anybody riding any horses and making any horses. You know, a good steer horse, first thing he needs to do, he needs to be broke to ride. There's nobody riding any anymore to get one broke to ride.
Well, we're in a hurry to get them out there and start roping on them, but I guess you got to go through the basics first. I always wondered, Jimbo, we would, every day we were home, I worked on the ranch and hauled the steers around for my dad for a few years, and we'd go gather a pasture of cattle every day on our good steer open horses or whatever we had at the time, and and sort them different ways, and part of the time we'd mix them all back together and turn them back out. I didn't know what we were doing. Gosh, I can't believe we're doing this. We got other stuff to do. So I guess that's what it was for. They were just putting
So
much needed miles on those horses.
what's behind the horse prices? Just a shortage? I mean, supply and demand, or just
Supply and demand. There's more ropers than there is horses.
yeah? But it's not just roping horses either.
No, it's all kinds of performance. Every performance horse you can think of. They're I'm going to say 50 to 80% higher than they was 5 years ago.
Well, a darn sure good, safe kid pony or something ought to be worth as much as any thing you can buy for them. Really.
Yeah.
They had a sale in Arizona a couple of months ago. And Trevor sold one 250,000. Trevor Brazil did.
I heard that.
Well, I like the way it's going and just not going my way to afford one today, Jimbo.
Right.
It's good to see for these guys that are making them and selling them.
Be nice to have a bunch of them to sell, wouldn't it?
Well, who would have thought?
I know. Usually they cost more to feed than what you get out of them. I mean, if you figure the time you got in them and everything, you didn't make $1 an hour, but now it's turned around, sound like.
Well, riding used to be a lot different thing. People used to ride a lot more. It was a part of everyday life for a lot of people. And there's a lot of other things going on to take people's attentions now, I guess,
Right.
besides putting in hours on a horse.
Yeah.
Makes sense
I guess.
in a way.
Yeah.
Makes sense in a way. Club ropings. You've put on a lot of club roping clubs. We've been involved with a lot of roping clubs.
We had our own one at one time down there at McAllister, Oklahoma.
We had a big one. We'd have 70-something bee ropers show up at it,
Yeah.
Jimbo.
We had a good roping here at one time. We'd get 40 or plus bee ropers and 15, 20 C's and 15, 20 A's.
I think it's going good again out there right
Yep.
now. They're getting a lot of ropers out there right
Yep.
now.
We're good.
In the open roping, even in the club ropings though, it's still the same guys you rope against every day, isn't it?
It is.
The same guys you
Same.
go against the rodeos. Sometimes it's just a regional thing. Sometimes it's just a regional thing. You don't see them all. We've had a lot of guys pass through the house, learning different things about steer roping through the years, Jimbo.
Right.
But there's one in particular that we need to address here. Oh, Mike Chase.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that, we're somehow associated with Mike Chase, and not everybody knows how or why. So I think we just got to clear that up for everybody since we got these microphones to talk and my dad's here. So
Right.
Mike Chase. My memory of Mike Chase is we were putting on a rodeo. I don't know, I think it's 25, 30 years ago in Hutchinson, Kansas, an open rodeo. And this guy named Mike Chase stayed the night.
And he didn't leave.
What else do we know about this? He lived in the backyard for a few years in his Capri camper.
Yep. Him and Cody shared a bedroom for several years. And they would argue just like brothers. And we moved to Oklahoma, and Mike, he followed us down there, and he bought a place that neighbors to us down there now. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Well, he's been in the NFR a few times, and he gave a real good run for the world here a while back, Jimbo.
Yeah.
Mike Chase, former winner of the Ben Johnson.
Yep. I remember that.
Drives real hard.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of good horses.
Well, it's good that you can influence somebody like that in a positive way, and they make something out of themselves.
There's a lot of them young ropers used to come stay with us. Rocky Patterson come stayed with us when he was in Hutchinson. I'd have to look at a list, but there was several of them.
Todd Casebolt came quite a bit.
Todd Casebolt came quite a bit. We moved to Oklahoma, and Chance Kelton come stayed for a while. He made the final. I don't know how many. He made the final team rope, steer rope both.
Oh yeah, one of the best ropers alive. You've seen a lot of good ropers. Who's one of the best ropers you've ever seen, Dad, just at roping? Pure roping.
Just pure roping.
Yes, sir.
Well, you'd have to look at Guy Allen first. He's undisputably the best steer roper that ever lived. But the best roper that I thought maybe rope caves, team roped, and rope steers together, I would probably have to say Arnold Phelps was the best one I ever seen. He handled the rope really, really good. Rode horses good. And he was hard to beat. There was another, Kenny Call. He was hard. He roped anything good.
You got to see Kenny Call rope quite a bit, haven't you, Jimbo?
Yeah, I've roped against him quite a bit. Yeah.
Roping son of a gun.
Yep.
Hollywood movie star now.
Yeah, I know it. Old Blue Duck jumped out of that window with him.
Well, Dad, you've been to the NFR 9 times, Cheyenne 4 times. That's a lot of Cheyenne buckles.
I've got a pretty little granddaughter that wears one of them.
Oh, yeah. He gave me a money clip he won there, Jimbo. It's awesome.
I bet.
I'll have to show it to you one of these days.
I bet.
I traded in a pair of spurs too.
Oh, we got a pair of
Yeah.
Spurs on display here in the museum.
Yeah.
You know, when you were can you remember your first trip ever to Cheyenne? Didn't Pete rope up there before?
Yeah, it's the first trip I went. I wasn't very big. I might have been 5 years old. It's the first time I ever went. And whenever they have the national anthem, they parachute down the flags. And they told me that was monkeys on the end of that parachute, and I run all over Cheyenne looking for those monkeys, and I never did find them.
You know, he ended up catching one of them parachutes just a few years ago, Jimbo. I remember it. He was so damn proud of it. And now I know why.
Looking for that monkey.
It was a lifelong goal
Right.
to catch one of those flags. I think the Beach Boys were playing or something.
Yeah.
With some American flag parachutes out.
They always had some good entertainment up there, didn't they?
Oh, yeah.
Still do, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I think, you know, all the top guys they play up there.
Yeah.
The last one I remember that we liked so well was Kid Rock. It was
Yeah.
good watching.
I remember as a kid going to see Fess Parker. You know, the old Daniel Boone was popular then, and Davy Crockett and all that. But and I can't imagine, he just walked around talking. I can't imagine why that was good, but we thought it was good just to see Fess Parker. But he couldn't, I know he didn't sing, but he just walked around in that buckskin and talked.
One of the wildest ones I've ever seen up there. The guy that was the lead singer for Alabama, I forgot what his name is. He had a whole orchestra behind him singing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he didn't have Alabama, the band, back there
Yeah.
behind him. It was just an orchestra.
Yeah. Huh.
That was something else.
Yeah.
I remember Charlie Daniels. He would come rope the dummy with us kids behind the grandstands.
Yeah.
And
I think Garth Brooks might be there this year.
oh yeah, that's what I read.
Yeah.
We had a lot of shenanigans behind them grandstands, Jimbo.
Yeah.
Growing up, we made I can say it now because he's not with us anymore. But Leo Camarillo, we made him real mad one time. His kid, for some reason, we had him drinking this mud water. We
Yeah.
don't know. I don't remember what was going on, but hell, he liked it.
Yeah.
He liked it. Mud. And then Larry, then this other guy, he started making these mud beers for all us kids. We were all liking it, but Leo Camarillo came around back there, and we were drinking these mud beers, little kids under the grandstands, and he didn't like nothing about it.
You got to build up your immune system somehow.
I know.
That old water and that manure and stuff, that had to be.
I found an old lime from a lemonade or something I had down in mine, sprucing it up a little. It was good.
Yeah.
I remember one time, the worst one I ever did was, what was the rodeo they used to have in Kansas, right, during Cheyenne, but not Fredonia? Fort Scott? Mm-hmm. Okay, Fort Scott, Kansas, Jimbo. Well, they were up somehow, one of the first ropers, maybe that morning or first steer open was one of the first events during the rodeo. Well, they roped at Cheyenne that day, and they were up at Fort Scott that night. Well, I went to the carnival, and I was nowhere to be found. They could not find me. So they finally found me over at the carnival. We got loaded up. We're headed to Fort Scott, Kansas, to the rodeo. And they had this great big gas tank in the back of the car, Jimbo, biggin, in the back of the pickup. I don't know, 300-gallon gas tank or something. We fill it up, and about the time we pull out of Cheyenne, I need to go pee, Jimbo. Well, they made me hold it all the way to Fort Scott, Kansas, and we got there just in time to see him and Mike Thompson steer, trotting down the arena, turning them out. So caused them to be late to that rodeo that day.
Yeah. That was cutting it a little short anyway, though.
It was
Kinda
kind
me
of
like. Can't blame it all on you.
Well, I was at the carnival, Jimbo. They got even with me, though. They got even with me.
there was a nice gentleman up there around Topeka. Had them red lights on top of his car, stopped us and kept us about an hour and a half. That didn't help much either.
No, that.
They didn't let me get out and go to the bathroom when we were stopped by the cop either, Jimbo.
Right.
I remember it. That was a day of days in my life, right there.
Yeah.
The drive from Cheyenne to Fort Scott, Kansas, to the rodeo. It was a good one.
Needing to pee.
Yeah, the worst ever.
Yeah.
The worst ever. The worst ever, Jimbo.
Right.
After all this, do you got anything else for my dad?
Oh, we're just tickled to have him here. You know, we've been wanting to get him on here for a long time, and he's somebody I've admired his roping and horsemanship for a long time. You know, and he was really a good roper, and like I say, somebody I really admired.
Thank you, Jimbo.
Well, while we got you here, you're not writing a book or anything, and not teaching too many schools anymore. So let's give someone just a brief knowledge if they're wanting to try to rope steers and trying to get a horse going roping steers. Can you give them like the 1, 2, 3, 4 step of starting your steer horse to hauling him to your first jackpot real quick?
First of all, start with the horse that's broke. It's been rode outside, rode inside. And you would like for him to be gentle on the ground. Not all of them would be, but you would like for him to be. Then get him where he track steers and go to logging him. And I always drove my horses on the ground, and I drove them a lot.
Like a wagon.
Yeah, we used to do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Or on a sled or something.
Yeah. Get them listening to you, and
Yep, get them to trusting you. Know you're not going to do anything back there to them.
right.
And do all that before you ever tie a steer down on him. Get him logging like you want him to, and then you're ready.
Then you're ready.
Then you're ready.
Okay.
And learn how to ride a horse yourself too. So many people try to rope but can't ride a horse. Good enough to rope.
I know
you
that, but it's better watching.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, steer rope is pretty serious business.
Right.
Pretty serious business. So you better do a lot of home preparation before you just start tying them down, probably, Jimbo.
Right.
In fact, Brett Boatwright, he was riding an outside horse for Brett Boatwright. I'm going to let him tell the story, but he hadn't really even tied a steer down at the time. Yeah. But tell me the story about Brett Boatwright, one of the best ropers to ever live, Jimbo, as far as roping horns. I mean, there's not too many people better than Brett Boatwright. So this is a really fun story.
Well, we lived up there in Hutchinson, Kansas, and lived close to where Brett lived at the time. And he sent a horse over for me to ride, and I got him ready to go to some ropings. The fact is, I hauled him to some ropings. Well, Brett was busy rodeoing, and he come in. He's going to be home for a week or so, and he come up and says, "Well, I want to trip some steers." And I said, "Okay, come on." Come on there, and we loaded the steers. And he run all the steers and didn't catch one. We had to bring them back a time or two and uncinch the horse and let him rest. And I think he run 10 steers before he ever caught one. And that was just the difference of having a dally rope and one that's tied hard and fast.
Yeah.
And running to a different spot.
Right.
A lot of things to think about when you're tying a steer down.
Yep.
But there's nothing more satisfying in life than steer roping.
Right, when it all works and, ride it behind one and really rope him good, and that is a good feeling.
Well, Dad, when you're buying a steer horse, when you're just looking at a horse to maybe be a steer horse, if he's not already a roping horse of some kind, what do you look for, personally?
Personally, the first thing I look at one, I look see how deep he cinches. I want a horse to cinch deep, have a good set of weathers for your saddle, and I want to see how long his shoulder is, how long his hip is. I want a long hip, a good flat shoulder on one of them horses. And then I look at something hardly anybody else does. I look see how his neck ties into his body. I want one of them steer horses' necks to tie in a little higher than a lot of quarter horses do. And then I want your throat latch. I want kind of a small throat latch because most of them horses are easier to get in your hands the way you want one to than a horse that's got a big throat latch. I don't pay as much attention to one's head as a lot of people do. I look at one's head from his head back. When he travels, I want him to travel good and straight. I don't want him to paddle or to pick up inside. I want a horse to be good long hip. But then I want his back feet to set under him just a little bit, that way, whenever a horse gets ready to come out of there, he can get on his hind end and come and keep his power, keep his speed, and keep his power. That's what I look for.
You know, growing up, we had our logs, and you don't see very many set of logs like we had growing up. They were big, big buggers, Jimbo. I played Spider-Man on the side of my horse because they had.
Did you have two of them tied together?
Well, I was going to let him explain that real quick.
Okay.
Yes, we had two logs tied together. I had a front log, then I had a back log, and my back log was usually forked where it wouldn't roll. And then I had a weight on the front of them logs. And I wanted everything I'd done artificial to be as close to the real thing as it could be. And you'd circle those logs and drag your front log, and that was supposed to represent your first jerk.
Right.
Then whenever you start to come out of there and your back log hits it, that would represent your second jerk. Then when your horse and you got off and you made your horse stand out on the end of it, I would make him hold that weight up off the ground to represent holding the steer's head.
Yeah. Told you he was old school. That's the way they did it back then.
Well, shoot, we've been winning on the new school on the same technology, Jimbo. Ain't that crazy? Ain't that crazy? You know, there's a lot of tools for team roping nowadays. Some of those tools could be applied for steer roping on maybe just learning to catch, run up there and rope. That's about it. You got to make your own logs. I don't think there's a commercial set of logs available, you know, anything. So this is how you got to do steer roping. If you want a sled, I don't think there's a commercial sled available to lay one down on, you know, so you can go and tie their legs. And
There was one they called a steer and tie.
log and tie.
Log and tie.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine at Lubbock, Texas is the one that manufactured them. His name was Farabee. Last name was Farabee. And a lot of people had them. You know, I never did have one because I'd have to tie another log on behind it, put a weight in front of it, so I just never did have one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we never used one of them, but I tied several of them, and there wasn't anything like tying a real one. I prefer tying a real steer's legs.
Oh yeah,
personally.
you can't simulate that, no matter how good it is.
We used to have tying tournaments down there in McAllister. You'd draw somebody, or would everybody run? How would you run those, Dad?
Well,
Big ones, Jimbo, before the ropings.
Yeah.
There might be 50 guys in it.
we run it tournament style. We put all the names in the hat. Just say Cody Garnett, he drew Joe Blow. And they would have a match. And it was a two-steer match. And the winner of that would advance to the next deal until you had a winner.
It was always fun.
It was always fun. We'd had low entry fees and always give some sort of a little prize or a cap or something. Then at the end of the year at our finals, we'd have a bigger one and give a better prize. We usually give a plaque.
All kind of different stuff,
Yeah.
but it was always fun. You know, all the big names, they'd be there, they'd enter it, and you got to see them up close and personal. Got to see how they do things instead of just watching them out in the arena doing it. So
Right.
it was a neat learning experience for a lot of the B&C ropers too. You know, not even realizing they were getting to watch something really, 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 really great actually.
Right.
You know, as Cody was growing up, all the top steer ropers would come by the house and a lot of them, like between Cheyenne and Dodge City, they'd come stay for a day or two, or between, when Coffeeville and Veneta was going on, they'd come to the house, stay a day or two. And I run Cody at all the world's champions running down the rope tying.
Yeah.
None of them beat him. Cody had the fastest hands of any young man I ever seen.
But I didn't have the brain for it, Jimbo.
Well,
Couldn't hold it all together.
Yeah, well,
One of those deals. One of those deals. Well, Dad, I asked someone a question. Been asking you a lot of questions, but I asked these guys questions at the end of every podcast, and yours, I've been thinking a lot on it. So, if you were to go back and talk to your younger self about your rodeo days, what kind of stuff would you tell him now, before he goes full steam?
Like if somebody.
Yeah, what kind of advice would you just give yourself?
What kind of advice would you give myself?
Yes, sir. Your young self.
My young self. And I was going to go hard. Hang around the winners. Always hang around them people that you looked up to and thought you would have a hard time beating on your best day. And travel with somebody that you'd always keeps you upbeat and confident. That's what I would tell them. That's what I'd tell myself. Which I did hang around the best ones going. I traveled with Jim Davis, Phil Lyon, John Burchett. I tried to travel with the best ones going, because if they're winning, it would rub off on me and I'd win too. Like I told them, I said, there's a lot of people win more first than I did, but nobody win more seconds, thirds, and fourths than I did.
Well, this has been a good one, Jimbo.
sure has.
That's some good advice there.
Right.
Well, thanks for coming on, Dad. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you both for having me.
That's my hero right there.
I
Love you,
know.
Dad.
I don't blame you.
He's my hero now.
Yeah.
Him and Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lauren, she's the mastermind of all this, so we really lucked out. Married above my head, so
I have to agree. Black sheep is a family.
that's right.
Right.
All right, this has been another episode of Cowboys of the Osage podcast. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks for coming on, Dad.